Hello? Did it connect? I believe that's Trisha.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. And Trisha, you registered for 2. Is there someone with you?
Yeah, he's here. He'll be joining in a minute.
Awesome. Hey, no rush. I just am keeping the best I can, a rough just attendance check-in. So welcome.
He's just gonna share with me. Is that okay?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
perfect.
Welcome. Yep. All right, Mary, welcome. I see Mary Swinford, I believe, has joined us. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Glad you could be here with us.
I always log on early in case I've got problems.
Oh, don't you know, right? I mean, isn't that the way to go? I tested this earlier today with the links just to make sure, because and it never failed. So my sound drivers had to be reinstalled on my laptop because connecting to I've got a little TV kind of set up here, to be able to move around, and my microphone wouldn't work. And so I thought, what in the world? But it's never fails, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Mary and Trisha, if you don't mind sharing, I'd be curious to find out how you got linked to our workshop and maybe sort of what you're interested in before we get started here.
I think I saw the link for the workshop. I think it was on Hiker Babes. It's Central Indiana.
Okay.
Or one of the Hoosier hiking Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And they have a challenge this year that to take it. There's like a 20 or 30 different things of a challenge, and one of them was to take a class, and that fulfills this. So that's why I wanted to do it. And we're interested in backpacking. Sorry, we got like a bunch of dogs here.
How many dogs do you have?
We have 3 dogs of our own, and then we have a dog that we're house sitting for as well.
Oh, wow. Good for you. Okay. That's great. Okay, so it's a Facebook group then, one of those two?
Yes, that's
okay.
where I saw the link, yeah.
Right on. Excellent.
So I got connected with Camptown through my daughter, who's also part of some hiking Facebook group here in Indiana. And it was recommended to her, and she is actually going to be on later, as well as another daughter and my husband, because we're all in different locations right this minute.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so it's a bit of a family affair.
Yes, and we are planning trying to hike every state park in Indiana this year.
Excellent.
And I would say we're not novices, but we're not the most well-educated on maybe hiking for some of us anyway.
Okay.
So we always want to learn more.
Excellent.
Mary, if you're gonna hike all the state parks, you should look at doing the Explore Pins. Have you heard of that program?
No.
You go to a park, you hike, you attend a program, you do something site specific, and you volunteer, and you make a report to the naturalist, and you can buy a pen for is it $3? $2 for the pen for the specific park. It's called Explore.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you, Trisha.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed the DNR has some really cool challenges this year, right? And all the different kind of hike challenges and level challenges, and that's fun. It's cool. So all the state parks, I'm planning to take my wife for our anniversary down to New Harmony. We have never been. And have y'all been to Harmony or New Harmony State Park? Down kind of, towards Evansville?
No, we haven't been down that far. We've gotten 19 of our Explore pins in 2020.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
so I've never been to New Harmony. We haven't.
Does that mean 19 parks that you visited?
Yep, and we volunteered, which mostly meant picking up trash as we hiked.
Okay.
And then attended a program and reported back to the naturalist and did a site specific at each one of the parks.
That's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
you.
It's really neat how all the state parks have their own like interesting history. You know, like Mounds used to be an amusement park, and Charlestown, and you know, Fort Bend, and just all the parks have a very unique history and how they got to be a park.
I agree. I mean, I think you could really teach Indiana history through state parks.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, I mean, and you go all the way back, right, into the kind of first inhabitants, indigenous peoples, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's evidence and obviously into, you know, European settlement and things like that. It's very cool. I need to step away and grab my charger, but don't worry, I will just be back in a minute. So, yeah. Okay, so if you are still still have audio on, Trisha and Mary, have you been backpacking before, or are you predominantly day hikers?
Just day hiking here.
Cool.
Just day hiking, but a couple of just small backpacking and no camping. So we don't really have a lot of camping experience, but that's another goal.
Okay. Well, good. Well, you're in the right place then, because we'll hopefully take some of the edge off and make it approachable. Thanks. All right, welcome. I believe we have Anil. I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhere close.
That is correct.
That is correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to have you. I was asking Trisha and Mary about their interest in the workshop and sort of how they got connected and what they were interested in. And if you're open to sharing, we'd love to hear yours as well.
Yeah. So basically, I'm so what you would say, a young adult, I guess. So I've never done backpacking before. I've been camping maybe a couple of times. So I just want to learn the skills so that I can try backpacking this year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good. And you said you've camped a few times. Do you camp and hike much in Indiana?
Yes. So because of COVID, I've been hiking a lot in the state parks in Indiana.
Okay.
And those are my camping experiences as well within Indiana.
Okay. Yep. You know, we're hearing that so much, is that people who hadn't been getting out into the state parks before, and that may not be your circumstance, but from people that hadn't been out, said this is the year, right, that we got out.
Yeah, that's my circumstance. So I have to be honest.
And what better time, right? You're socially distant, you're outside, you know, fresh
Yeah.
air. exercise. That's great.
But also, yeah, it's mostly depends on the group that you get. So I got in contact with this group that was within my age group, and so they contacted me actually, and we just started, hanging out and just going to parks and just hiking.
I love it. Very cool. Be admitting people here and from the waiting room. So bear with me there. And so those of you that are on the line and can hear, do you have favorite state parks in Indiana?
Brown County for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Especially in fall, or do you stay away from the crowds in fall?
I went, I think I went when it was really, really crowded, but I usually go very early.
Okay.
So I leave at around 7, so I get there around 8. So usually it's not too bad. But when I'm coming back, that's when it gets crazy.
Yep. Okay. Very cool. Thanks for sharing. So welcome to Abby, Juan, Kathy, and Jen. And we are just a few minutes away from getting started here. Forgive me, but glad you all were able to join us tonight. And I must give a special hello to Mr. Onge. Juan, hola, ¿cómo estás?
What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Not much. I'm doing very well. Yeah, great to see you. Or hear you, as it were. There you are. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us. For the others, me and Juan went on a camping trip to Tennessee and whitewater rafting and hiking probably about 13, 14 years ago now.
Yeah.
And Juan, do you mind if I share what you do?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So Juan works with the Boys and Girls Clubs and is a champion and an advocate for outdoor adventures with kids. And so that's what Camptown does. And so we went out on a trip together some years ago. And you were the best sport. You made it so fun for all of us.
Good time. Something I fell into, so literally, figuratively.
All right. Welcome. We've got several others joining us, and doing my best to admit you as quickly as possible. All right. Great group. Okay, since it is 6:30 and we do have a great group here, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna run through kind of some opening slides. And while I do, if you would, drop into the chat bar how you came connected to this event, like how'd you hear about this? And then, or what do you want to get out of it? Like, what are your hopes for tonight's workshop? And I will do my best to sort of navigate. It's just me solo facilitating, so to navigate your comments, and we're gonna dive in. And so I'm click in here to our overview. I'm Brent Freeman. I work with Camptown, and my role is Executive Director Designate. And you are here for the Beginning Backpacking Skills Workshop, and we're glad to have you. Camptown is a youth organization. Our mission is to challenge, mentor, and teach youth about life through outdoor adventure and nature programs that build confidence, character, and hope. So we believe the outdoors is a great classroom for young people. And you might get to hear a little bit more about that tonight. So we're glad that you're here with us. Here is our agenda. We will do an overview, a short overview of Camptown, just let you know our story. And then we've broken up the Beginning Backpacking Workshop into 4 chunks. 1, choose your trek, trip planning. 2, or I'm off on my numbers. First, forgive me. 2 is choose your trek, trip planning. 3 is gear up, equipment overview. 4 is eat well, meal planning, and 5 is stay healthy. And we'll talk about personal hygiene. I want to leave plenty of time for questions. I do want this to be interactive. Zoom is a poor substitute for in-person. And so I just want to acknowledge that. If you have a question, feel free to use the raise the hand feature or drop in the chat bar. I also don't mind if you come off of mute and just say, I've got a question. That is fine too. And so I do want this to be as meaningful for you as possible tonight. And so we can keep it interactive and informal, and we'll keep it moving. So here is a short intro video, give you an idea of Camptown. Excuse me.
I like that, we did a lot of like hands-on stuff, that we can't do, on a day-to-day basis.
Give me again. Here we go.
Can't do, on a day-to-day basis. I feel like we got closer with like the Camptown counselors.
So we got through, we know where north is on there. Where's north on the bank?
Right.
It's called it ends with rose. You ever heard of it?
Like a
Cardinal rose, compass rose.
Camptown has had a lot of different sessions with us before trips where they will come in and do training and orientation for students about skills that they'll need while they're out in the wilderness. They come into the schools, into the classroom, in my classroom as well, to teach and to orient those students to what they're going to be facing while out in the wilderness and what kind of skills they'll need while they're out there as well.
One reason why I would love to go back there is I love the counselors there. All of them are amazing and cool, and after that, I build friendships with them. One of them is named the counselor. I see them as friends. They're really good. Like, they help me out, help everyone out. If we like have a problem or something, we can always go to them.
They were very supportive through it all, even though, we complain a lot, but they were like, motivated us so, we could do this.
So today is going to be a very, very different hike. And I do not want to be distracted by these burdens. So today, I'm going to experience.
We had to hike uphill. There's this like rock at the very top, and we were able to see like over everything. When I was like climbing up, all of us, we were complaining, and I was like, we're never gonna make it. Can we take a break? And our leader was like, no, let's just keep going. We're almost there. We can do it. We can do it. By the time we got up there, we were like, wow, it is worth it because it's a really pretty view. And we were like, we felt accomplished that we didn't think we could do it, but we did. There's the physical challenges, but I felt like overall it was bonding and being able to work with everyone and just being able to face your challenges head on and being able to conquer.
My first time going to Camptown, like we had to try a lot of new things. Every time I did something in Camptown, I was like, yeah, I want to go because we outside and make it so much fun. So I used to just not really do that much. Camptown, they helped me like stay on my feet and always do something.
All right, and so that video gives you just a picture of what we do here at Camptown. We are a high-impact Indianapolis youth nonprofit, served over 40,000 youth since our founding 30 years ago in 1991. We're based right here in Indianapolis. We teach life skills through outdoor adventures. We typically serve over 3,000 youth per year, and most of the youth that we work with are in poverty, and most are also persons of color. Our adventures range from in-school environmental education to 5-day wilderness backpacking and whitewater rafting like you saw on the video. And over 95% of our participants receive financial assistance thanks to the generosity of our supporters and partners. And if you're wondering where I am, I'm actually at the Crux, which is our climbing facility. And this is something it's available to the public, but we use this for our groups as well. And this is our bouldering wall here up at Camptown. So we, again, are glad that you've joined us here. And now let's dive in to the content. A little bit more, here I am struggling, a little bit more about Camptown, our impacts, leadership, teamwork, confidence, and respect. And then if you want to learn more about what we're doing, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Camptown Indy. Feel free to attend one of our events and or subscribe to our newsletter. And all of that can be found on our website, camptown.org. And so here's our content for tonight, starting with choose your trek and trip planning. And so got one more in the waiting room. Make sure that I'm letting Kelly in to join us. Great. So I'd love to hear from you all. And what are some considerations that might be most important to you when choosing a trek? So backpacking is carrying on your back, a pack and going right on an overnight trip where you've got everything you need carried on your back. So what are some considerations that might be most important when choosing a trek and planning your trip?
Skill level.
Say again?
Skill level.
Skill level. Excellent. Thank you, Juan. Anyone else?
Distance.
Good. That's good. And those two can kind of work together, right? Skill level and distance. If we know we have the physical ability and the skill, we might go for a longer distance. What else?
Having the right gear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The right gear. And so those are all great examples of ideas and things, considerations, right, for selecting the right trip. And so here's some things to think about in choosing your trek. Group size and, like was shared, experience. I would strongly recommend that people avoid solo treks, especially if you're a beginner. That's something that does take a different level of skill and commitment and planning. And quite honestly, it's a higher level of risk. If something goes wrong, obviously you're on your own. And then start with small mileage and small elevation and increase. And so if you've read the book, A Walk in the Woods, it's a hilarious picture of somebody thinking they could jump right in and do the Appalachian Trail. No, start small and build from there. Consider driving radius, right? What scenery are you seeking? Do you want to see mountains in Colorado or Tennessee? Do you want to see forests? How far are you willing to drive? That narrows down sort of what, or fly even, what you're willing to do location-wise. Think of the seasons and the weather. Fall is the most temperate and dry with the beautiful foliage. And spring has wildflowers. You might have rain, but the cooler temperatures can be really nice. I personally enjoy backpacking in all 4 seasons. Winter requires a bit more gear and some additional planning, but is a blast. And so is summer, especially if there's somewhere you can jump in and get wet. Think of the trail conditions. You have to know where is the parking, right? The trailheads, the mileage that you might have to go between your parking area and your water or your campsites. So these are things to know in advance. And most can be gained from a little bit of web research and talking with a ranger for specific conditions. And along the lines of talking with a ranger, different locations, different sites would have different permits, regulations, and fees. And so that may be an entry fee if you're talking about Shade State Park, but it may also be a backpacking fee or a permit fee if you're talking about a place that requires you to register and pay a backcountry fee. And then if you're going further out into national parks, reserve early for those high traffic destinations because they book many of them 6 months in advance as soon as reservations are available. So here are 5 ideas that are close and accessible in our beautiful state of Indiana. It doesn't mean you don't have to go to Tennessee or Colorado to have a good time backpacking. Probably my favorite beginning backpacking trail is the Low Gap Trail at Morgan-Monroe State Forest. It's a 10-mile loop with a really nice rock shelter view, and there's accessible water from the campsites year-round, and it's really a pretty reasonable entry point. I've done that with my 5-year-old and 7-year-old boys, and we just did about 3 miles round trip because of their ages. And it was the perfect entry point for them. So we parked only 1.5 miles from our campsite, and then we spent the night and we hiked 1.5 miles back out. The Peninsula Trail at Hoosier National is very popular, and you can actually camp on the shore or the banks of Lake Monroe or Monroe Reservoir. It is busy. It can get kind of crowded in the campsites, but it's a beautiful way to watch the sunset across Lake Monroe, just 90 minutes south of Indianapolis or so, near Bloomington, Indiana. The Tecumseh Trail is a nice single line. It's not a loop trail, from Morgan-Monroe State Forest all the way to and through Yellowwood State Forest, and it does go down and touch Hoosier National Forest. Tecumseh Trail is 42 miles, I think, in length, but there are 3 shelters along the way. So you can actually stay in a backcountry shelter and not have to drag a tent around. Shade State Park has a great entry-level backpacking trail. I believe it's 3 miles from the trailhead to the backcountry camping area, and it's on the beautiful Sugar Creek, which many of you would know from Shades and of course Turkey Run State Park. And then the Knobstone Trail. This is Indiana's longest backpacking trail, I believe 58 miles, but there's a really good loop at the top, the north section of the trail. And you can do a section or you could do a full sort of, I think it's 14-mile loop around the top of the Knobstone Trail. And so these are some considerations when choosing your trek. I'm going to pause and just see if there are any questions or comments before we roll on. Okay. All right, we will keep rolling. All right, so part of sort of choosing your trek is really planning ahead. And one thing that we do at Camptown that I highly recommend, it's very useful for safety and for just making sure that the whole trip is thought through, is an expedition report. Now, when I'm going by myself, I won't use this level of detail and this level of depth, but this concept is very helpful. And so I've taken the sort of highlighter to this expedition report, and you can see that it includes the location of the trip, and it includes where each of the nights would be here, and approximate overnight accommodations. It includes nearby hospital. It includes nearby sort of ranger station. It includes where other activity stations may be. And then we travel in groups, and so we include name and emergency contact information from all of our participants. But what we find is this plan reduces the likelihood of something going wrong, because when we've thought through exactly where we're going to stay, we can then communicate with the ranger station. We can find out if a trail is closed because of windfall and trees down, or because there's a section on the Tecumseh, matter of fact, that is closed right now because a road is closed, right? And so, but you have to do the planning and route route plan in advance in order to find those things out. And most of the time we find the rangers or the property managers love talking with us about the trip and planning the trip. And so that's an overview of choosing your trek. And now we're going to jump to gear and gearing up. And so it is easy to think that you have to spend a fortune to go backpacking. And honestly, you can spend a fortune to go backpacking. It's easy to spend $300 on a tent and another $300 on a backpack, and another $200 on a sleeping bag. All of a sudden, you're pretty close to $1,000 and you've only got 3 pieces of gear. It's also easy to do it on a budget and to make it much more accessible. And so the key is knowing where you need to start. And so what I like to do is just ask for you all to help me to brainstorm the 10 essentials, okay? So it's a common sort of hiking outdoor notion that there are 10 essential gear items or gear systems that you want to make sure you have with you whenever you leave out and go on a hike or a backpacking trip. So if you have an idea of what 1 or 2 of those 10 essentials are, just jump off of your mute button and share that. I see Cheryl, do you have an idea? Or others? What might one of the 10 essentials be?
First aid kit.
Yep. First aid kit, excellent. Medical supplies, absolutely. Who else? Yeah, navigation system, bam. And so a compass is great, and it's really more helpful with a map, right? And so the map and the compass, great. What else?
Something to start a fire with.
Yes, something to make a fire. And so matches, right? A lighter, sort of fire starter, yes. Some of you may be experts in sort of fire by friction and bow and spindle fire, so maybe that's what you're gonna bring instead. What else? Those are 3.
Your sleep system.
Yeah, your shelter, we'll call it, sleep system. Yeah, so tent, sort of backpack, sort of tent, sleeping bag, pad. Yeah, what else?
Food.
Yes, right. Don't forget the food. Let's eat well when we're in the backcountry. All right, so that's 5. What else?
A knife.
Yeah, a knife. A knife. Why is a knife so helpful?
If you lose your ferro rod, you could use it to scrape bark.
There you go. All kinds of survival applications for that knife. Can even be a little bit of protection, right? And we hope sort of nothing happens. The odds are extremely unlikely, but it's great protection. And you may need a gear repair, right? You may need to actually cut something off of a piece of clothing and repair. And so a knife or a multi-tool, very helpful. You guys have gotten 6. Do we have a 7th or an 8th?
I don't know if you pair this in with food, but water.
Water.
Oh, yeah, you gotta have extra water or access to water, right? Which may mean water purification system. Yeah, excellent, excellent.
Cooking tools.
Cooking tools. Yeah, we would include that in our food system and sort of the extra food and extra water. Here, I'll drop the list right here. You guys have done a great job. Clearly, we have an experienced outdoor group on this call, on this Zoom tonight. So the other things I would say, extra clothes, and you think about rain gear, right? You think about for warmth in the winter, for insulation, like this is a down vest that can just compress to be about this big, but is so warm. Sun protection, right? And so, you know, thinking of that either that broad brimmed hat and or sunscreen or sort of SPF protectant, you know, clothing. And I don't think we mentioned headlamp, right? And sort of that light source, in addition to that heat source or that cooking source for fire, is that headlamp. And so we think these are the 10 essentials that should go with someone whenever they're on a backpacking trip, and they're a great start. But they're not everything that you would need. And here is a really helpful basic backpacking checklist from REI. And of course, REI likes producing these because they hope you'll come into their store and buy their things with their checklist. And you can, of course, and REI is great and they have great advice. And you can get a lot of this at Walmart or at Amazon or at different places that maybe are a little bit more affordable than REI. But here is the list of obviously the basic backpacking gear. And I'm just going to pause and just give folks a chance to sort of look through this for a few seconds. And then I'll actually show you a few pieces within a packed pack. Just give me a second to look through this basic backpacking checklist. All right, are there any questions about any of the items on this checklist before we jump forward? All right. Hearing and seeing none. Let me make sure. Okay, I apologize because you all have been putting great things in the chat and I was not able to access it until right now, but now I have it. And is there a link that we can download this checklist from? Yes, and it's on the slide deck here. And I can push this out to you all in an email afterwards. And of course, it can be found on their website under backpacking info. Thank you, Abby and Cheryl. All right, so next slide. We also rent gear, and that's not a big part of what we do. But if that would help you to get outside and say, oh, I don't have to buy the whole system, but I could rent for a very approachable price. We're not the only ones that do this, but sort of you got to find Rusted Moon or IU Outdoor down in Bloomington. There's a few of us, but look us up and we'd be happy to help you get set up for your first trip. And so in a second, we'll talk about the ABCs of packing your pack. This may actually give a bit of a visual. So on the outside here, we have the rain cover, right? And this is for an essential piece because not only will this keep your gear dry, which sleeping in a wet sleeping bag is totally no fun, but it keeps your pack clean and lets your pack live longer because you have a cover, and so it keeps those branches or those thorns or those sort of mud and dust and dirt on the trail, keeps it off, and that makes a huge difference in the life of your pack. And so it's worth it. And so I'm going to take off the rain cover here and all right. And so this is a Kelty Red Cloud. It's a 90-liter pack, which is quite enormous and would be sufficient for multi-day treks. When you see numbers after pack like 90 or 55 or 58 or 30, usually it's the cubic sort of space is the volume in the pack. And once you get above 50, 60, you are talking multi-day, sort of more than overnight packs. Most people can get an overnight pack in 40 to 60 liters. And so, but this is a big boy and it's very expandable. And you can see that just from how I packed this pack, which was very quick pack and simple pack, it is, generally speaking, it is balanced. So it is even from one side to the other, right? And I've packed several things for accessibility. And so there's some accessible parts on the pack that I want to highlight to you. One is the brain. And can you hear me okay? If you can, just drop something in the chat.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure, because as I back up, I want to make sure you can hear me okay. So this we call the brain, the top pouch of the pack. This is great for accessibility. So what are some of those 10 essentials that you might need to keep accessible? And grab them quickly while you're hiking. What are some of those things?
Sunscreen.
Yeah, sunscreen.
First aid.
First aid kit, yeah. Water, right? To be able to get your water, we have the water bottles on the sides. We have our water purification kit here in the brain on top. And this, what we like to use, because it's easy, it's quick, it's light, is iodine tablets or some type of sort of chemical that, you know, we're able to put into our water quickly and then just keep moving. Of course, you can buy filters. You can also boil your water. These are more expensive and time-consuming typically than basic iodine tablets. What else might we want? Accessible. This, if you can't see it, what's that?
Map.
Your map.
Bam! Yes. This is a vintage knobstone map. It costs 95 cents. So I have no idea how old it is, but I know it's more expensive than 95 cents today. What are some other things we might want handy?
Your knife.
Yeah, your knife. You could even keep that flipped on you, or for safety, I know a lot of people that will wear them around their neck because that is a very hard place for someone to get, but easily accessible if you ever needed to quickly get right to reach your knife. The weather could turn quickly, so I might also need a rain, a rain jacket, or some people prefer to also bring rain pants, and so need to bring the rain gear. Or if it's in the winter, I would be bringing a couple more layers, right? I'll be putting this or a jacket or sort of a coat, a down, maybe a fluffy coat, accessible, that if I take a break, I can quick put a jacket on or a coat on and not get cold. Also, snacks, right? Some trail mix, something that's easy to sort of munch and go, keeping that handy and accessible. Most packs will have these side pouches for water, right? And so you can make sure you access water. Of course, a lot of people prefer, and I definitely do, is a Camelback system or some sort of drinking reservoir. Most packs now, you can put them in the back and you can pull that tube right out here and clip it on one of your shoulder straps, and you can be just drinking and hydrating the whole way. And so you don't even have to pull out your water bottle, right? And so those are a few pieces on accessibility. Now, when it comes to balance and compression, man, our bodies will thank us if our pack is balanced and compressed. And compression feeds into the balance piece, because if gear is sort of fluffy and floppy and able to move about, it often moves off of balance. And that can become particularly precarious when we're crossing a creek, or we have to cross a log, or we're in a tight section of trail. It also can just wear you out, right? Walking up the stairs and, it's just kind of dragging you down on one side. And so balance is really important. We love putting these Therm-A-Rest ridge rests. These are inexpensive. You don't have to get the Therm-A-Rest brand. These are great little sleeping pads, and they're super durable. They don't pop. I have had a really nice ultralight sort of sleeping pad myself that has unfortunately gotten leaks 2 or 3 different times. And that doesn't happen with these. And so these are very nice and very light. I like to keep that on the outside. And another benefit of this being accessible is when you take that lunch break and maybe there's moisture on the ground, or you really want to sit down, but there isn't, you can pop this down, right? Or if it's snowy, even in the winter, pop down this pad, you're off the ground and you're staying dry. Actually, one more thing to mention that we keep accessible. We'll look at this a little bit more in the later section, but this is our hygiene kit, right? This is for using the restroom, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's a bummer if you got to go and you can't get to your hygiene pack. And so in order to get good balance and compression in the pack, you start with the big rocks first. And so you always are loading your pack with your heaviest, most bulky items first. And so we like to put I like to always put the sleeping bag at the base of the pack and get it either in a compression sack or don't have to use a compression sack. You can cram it down in the base of the pack. And then on top of the sleeping bag is going to be our tent. Now, if we're traveling with someone, we may break the tent up into parts and share it. It's really easy to take the poles off, pack the poles on the outside of the tent as well with some of the side straps or side compartments. And then the tent is just a soft, and stakes. And then the tent is just a soft and squishy, right? And you can sort of compress it just like your sleeping bag and pack it in there. And this is a good size 3-person tent. And so if you can imagine, this just you being responsible for carrying sort of 1/3 of this weight if you're going with 3 people, or if you want to travel in luxury yourself. We also have a solo tent, just for visual, that is much lighter and much smaller. And of course, these are available, as well. And just things to think about is, if you're sharing some gear, right, it's a little bit lighter load based on some of the group gear. And then this is our food bag, and it has this really nice sort of roll top. It's also completely waterproof. And so when it's rolled down, this is, I think, an outdoor research bag, OR bag. Why is it helpful to have your food bag be waterproof? Thoughts? And I can see the chat bar. So if you either want to come off of mute or go to the chat bar, why might it be helpful to have your food bag waterproof? I'll give a hint. Where do you think you'll keep this bag at night? Will you put it in the tent with you? Will you hike back several miles and go put it in the car? Or might you?
Hang it in a tree.
What's that?
Hang it.
Yeah, bam. And so out in the backcountry, it is advisable to hang your food, even if it's not bear country, right? In bear country, you're talking bear canisters, to sort of bear safety requirements. Like if you're going out to the Rockies, you have to use, right? But in Indiana, we don't have bears. We sure do have a lot of raccoons and a lot of other little critters that like to chew through packs and chew through tents to get some of these yummy victuals. And so we like to hang our food, even if, again, it's just 4, 5, 6 feet off the ground. That's going to keep the raccoons from stealing your food at night or chewing a hole in your nice gear. And so, and then obviously clothing, you can put in a compression sack or a stuff sack, and that goes down in the base of your pack as well. And then I'm really down to the sleeping bag. The sleeping bag is just compressed in this bottom compartment, which, a lot of bags have this bottom compartment as well, where you can unzip and get into. We don't find that we really use that. And so I've started myself just using a top loading bag, because you put the gear that you're not using down into the bottom. And you can tell that some of this gear is heavier than others. And so the heavier gear either needs a counterbalance on another side of your pack, or it needs to be packed in the center. A particularly heavy system is typically like the cook system. And we have a pretty light and simple cook systems. We love the MSR pocket rockets and a lot of the very light and simple cook gear. Here's an example of just a 1 pint, pot that can be used over the fire, but of course it'll last a lot longer over the stove. And this is a great little cook system. Actually left a couple of Cliff Bars in here, nod to one of our sponsors at Cliff Bar. And then here's the fuel canister for this stove. And this stove is, I can get it without rocking my camera too much. This is the little MSR. I believe it's the pocket rocket, but this is just a tiny little stove. But these are so great and really helpful, especially if you're going with a sort of a boil only menu, right? And so we'll talk about that in a second, but the assembly obviously is very simple on this stove. And then from that little container and this fuel canister, there's our stove system. Okay. And so our goal tonight was not to give sort of every detail of the gear, but to give an overview and just an idea and some tips. And so are there any questions on gear before I jump to a couple pieces on safety? It's okay to have questions too, by the way. And I suppose I should check.
Do you have recommendations for, like you talked about the size of a pack?
Yeah.
A day hike. You know, let's say you're going to spend a day and you're going to hike 10, 15 miles someplace.
Yep.
How big a pack would you be carrying if you were doing that?
Are you spending the night or just in one day?
One day, no overnight.
Okay. Yeah, if I was not going to spend the night, I would keep it definitely under 30 liters. And so probably 20 to 30 liter pack or in that range. You'll have a lot of space for a big water reservoir and sort of all those 10 essentials and, you know, some extra food and clothing, etc. Much bigger than that, and I would just be cinching it down I wouldn't be using the space. When I day hike, a lot of times I'm taking a 13 liter day pack. And so that's pretty small. And a lot of it's, you know, water and food. And then I'll strap some extra gear on the outside. So does that help?
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful.
Great question, Brett. Any other questions on gear? Do I personally use hiking sticks? I joked that I wouldn't until I was 30 years old. And so let's see, I'm 36. I've used hiking sticks for 6 years, and they make the world of difference, especially if you're carrying a pack. And so I've tried to get my pack lighter. I've gotten some ultralight gear. My pack, I can 25, 30 pounds, but I feel great when I'm using those sticks. And it's a little bit of tricep workout too, because you're actually, you know, using your arms to propel. I find if I don't have hiking sticks, not only do my feet wear out a little bit quicker, right? Just the additional pounding, 10 to 15 pounds more on each step, but my hands can swell, right? Just because the blood is pooling in my hands. So I'll try to, like, you know, adjust my straps, hold my hands up here, hold my hands over my head. But the sticks, when you have the sticks, you don't worry about that. And then I say the other benefit is just the balance on the sticks. And so a lot more confident coming up and down slippery slopes, mud, ice, and hiking through a creek, right? And not kind of, you know, wondering if the rock is going to turn under me or my ankle will turn. So I'm a big fan of the hiking sticks. Yeah, Mary, they're helpful for balance. Yep. And I'm talking trekking poles, just to be clear. You know, you can grab a walking stick too, but I'm a big fan of the 2 trekking poles. And how much water should I bring? That's a great question. And it really matters sort of how far you're going and what your water access is going to be. And so if you're hiking in 1 mile and there's a water source there, you don't need to bring much. You're bringing a little bit for, you know, the sort of the journey in to be able to purify water. But there are trails, even in Indiana, where you may go 10 miles between water sources, especially in the summer when a lot of the forest streams are running dry. So you need to pack enough water to sustain physical activity for 10 miles. That can mean 3-4 liters of water. Another option is being able to cache or store water at different points along a trail. And there are a lot of places in like the Knobstone Trail in Southern Indiana where people do store water at road crossings and then grab it and refill their water canisters, you know, or their bottles as they're hiking along. But I usually start with 3 liters of water in a Camelback reservoir, and I go to my water source from there. And so, great questions. All right, we're gonna keep it moving. I did get a note from one of you in advance of this trip, just kind of thinking about safety and thinking about actually even bringing dogs, which I think is wonderful and something I've never done. But here are a couple pieces on safety. One, I am, granted, I'm a 6'2" male, and I'm sort of, I have never had any safety issues on any of my hikes, thousands of miles of hiking in terms of encounters with other people. I've encountered bears, I've encountered other things. But it's important to know the risk. A lot of people feel more comfortable with a GPS tracker or some sort of, there's plenty of tools out there where you can check in, right? Wherever you, satellite wise, so you're not relying on cell phone service. There are also cell phone apps that can do the same. Almost anywhere in Indiana, you're gonna have cell phone access for most of your hike, but that's not true of every place. And then I mentioned sort of that, like a sheath knife that you can wear around your neck for safety. And then dogs can help actually with the safety piece, but they'll also change the experience, right? So there is some management necessary of the dog, keeping them on a lead or knowing local regulations. Some campsites wouldn't let you, or trails even, wouldn't let you bring a dog with you. So that's a matter of knowing the techniques of, you know, is it appropriate and how to clean up after the dog and things of that nature. But you do see folks with their four-legged, their fur babies out on the trail for sure. All right, couple last thoughts on equipment. I know we're at almost 7:15 already. Is make sure before you go, get your pack fit right. And any gear outfitter will do that. Sort of, you know, again, your Rusted Moons, your REIs, they'll help you to fit a pack, but so will anyone who's been out quite a lot. And there are plenty of options for configurations on the backpack. And it's very important that it does fit you right, because you will get, especially over the course of lots of miles, you can get everything from blisters and, you know, sort of muscle pain to cramps, and it just shortens the sort of your lifespan on the hike, but also it's painful. It's no fun. And so the most common adjustments are here on your main shoulder straps, but there's usually straps up here that can help sort of draw your gear in towards your shoulders or let it hang back further. I like to keep mine sort of pretty tight, but I'll adjust this during the day, which just changes sort of the muscles that it is using on my back and shoulders to hold my pack. But the most important strap for fitting is this hip belt, and it should hit on top of your hips and hit just above your waist. And this is where the vast majority of the weight should be held in your backpack. And this is because your legs, your quads are your strongest muscles in your body, right? So your upper thighs, these are your biggest muscles in your body. And so the bulk of the weight of your pack, which some packs can be 40 or 50 pounds, right? It needs to be sitting on your hip belt. And so it needs to put that pressure down and not on your shoulders. If you're carrying too much weight on your shoulders, you'll tire quickly and have sort of muscle pain and all of those things. And so another trick with the hip belt is to clip it and then tighten your straps, right? And so these straps allow you to pull forward, which is much easier. And so I clip it and then I tighten it. And then instead of unclipping it while it's tight, and it really is, it's tight, like it's pulling, you know, my stomach in, I will actually loosen it first and then unclip it. And that lets these clips last much longer because the little plastic here on these teeth wears out if you unclip it while the pack is, and the strap is very tight. And so practice with that, practice before you go. Test all your gear prior, right? It's one thing to have some pretty cool stove widget, right? And think this is just, I'm gonna have a blast and make myself this delicious dinner. And you get out there and it doesn't work. It's missing a part. And so test all of your gear before you go. And then I think I was gonna say less is more in terms of gear. And so sometimes fun to think you're gonna use all these extra bells and whistles and bring, you know, 3 hatchets and 2 iPads and, no, I'm kidding, but all of those things. And so less is more. And, you know, find that just, you know, even bringing a book may be all I have time for. One thing I'll splurge on though is a hammock. I love bringing a hammock, hang out at the campsite once I get in there. All right, so move to eat well and meal planning. And we we'll touch on meal planning today. We won't spend a lot of time today, but I would suggest first piece of advice is just keep it simple, right? Because especially if you're doing one, this is a beginning backpacking course. This is not, you know, sort of how to make, you know, St. Elmo's quality steak and shrimp cocktail in backpacking. If you want that, we might talk about that at our next workshop in March. But this, keep it simple for beginning backpacking. And so there's some options, right? You can do cook, you can do boil, you can do no cook, right? And no cook is easier, right? You can just pull your food out and eat it straight away. And so when you talk about cooking, you can go to an extreme, right? And you can bring, I've had steaks on the trail, bring frozen steaks or refrigerate, or find a way to refrigerate steaks and prepare them, you know, that night. And that's great, but it's also not necessary. And so what are some options for boiling or no cook meals? And of course, if you go no cook, you also don't have the weight of a cook system, you know, that you'll need to carry. And so what are some options? I'll share with you a few today in terms of boil and no cook. The outdoor outfitters will sell freeze-dried meals, and some of them are actually pretty good. If we were in person tonight, I'd have cooked you one or two of those and we'd be sharing and enjoying those, but there's a pandemic raging, and so we couldn't be in person and can't be sharing food like that. But those are $8 to $10 a meal, and that can be cost prohibitive for some of us. And so there are alternatives to those expensive freeze-dried meals. This is just some trail mix and some dried fruit. I think this is the bomb. Yep, and I see some, oh good, yeah, no cooked tuna packets. How'd you know? Yeah, I have some of those in my bag right here. And so the tuna packets with the flavors, I know not everyone likes them in terms of the like tuna, right? Not everyone's a big tuna fan, but once you throw in like barbecue or lemon pepper or Asian zest, you know, some of these really have pretty awesome flavor, and it doesn't taste like tuna. But something else that is a bit of a trick that might help some of us is freeze-dried mashed potatoes, okay? And so you can see there, we've got a few different flavors. We've got sour cream, we've got baby reds, we've got roasted garlic. Anybody getting hungry? Maybe a little bit hungry. But no, these are really easy. And actually, if you're careful, you can pour the boiling water straight into a package. Another way to do it is to repackage it into a freezer bag. And of course, these are usually made for a pot or a pan. And if you bring a cook system like this, you can eat it straight out of this. And these are also really, you're able to be creative with what you add into this. So think, what might you eat with mashed potatoes at home, right? And one thing is people might like to do Thanksgiving on the trail, okay? And so if you are into celebrating that or you like to eat like that, you know, mashed potatoes and some stuffing mix, right? And this can be prepared with just that boiling water, stirred up, and then let sit. Now, I wouldn't bring the boxes on the trail. And so as I get into, so we're looking at the slide here, talking repackaging your food. And that's important for both weight, but also for waste. And we are big fans of leave no trace practices, which basically mean you need to pack out everything that you pack in and sort of leave the environment that you trekked in better than when you found it. And so repack, you know, in these into Ziplocs or some sort of little bite-sized container. So those are a couple of other ideas. Yeah, awesome. Easy Mac, dried noodles, ramen is a great one on the trail. Oatmeal, you can eat that straight out of the oatmeal packs with that boiling water poured in. Now, set it down when you pour the boiling water into it. Rice cakes, so good, so light and so healthy. Smear some peanut butter or even spice it up with some Nutella, right? Some chocolate hazelnut and honey. Another thing that packs really well are bagels, right? They don't smash like bread, but you can even make them the day before. Honey, peanut butter, throw some chocolate chips or some raisins on those bagels, and you have a high calorie, delicious lunch snack. I'm also a big fan of summer sausage and chunk cheese. Chunk cheese usually good, and don't quote me on this, but like 24 hours or so without being refrigerated. And you can just slice that with some summer sausage and kind of eat, as you go. I may eat lunch like 3 times on a long backpacking trip because, and as it says on the slide, you may burn 4,000 or 5,000 calories per day. And I'm a big guy, and so I can burn a lot of calories with a full pack. And so be mindful of that. You typically will be more hungry and, be wanting to eat more than if you were just sort of at home or in the typical daily routine. And so it's actually a great excuse then, right? To get some really good food. Dessert wise, we've already talked some sweet things, but you can do dried pudding, right? Pudding powder. And you can use a evaporated milk and pre-mix that, and you're just adding water then, and you can make a delicious, in Ziploc bags, a delicious, chocolate or vanilla, or mix them both, pudding. And then I always like to throw in, a Snickers bar or two for a dessert. Apples, fruit, yeah, especially fruit that can get kind of compressed, or like bananas get damaged. They sell, banana containers, but yeah, apples are great. Oranges are great. Yes. Questions or other thoughts on trail, eating on the trail? It's so funny because I had with me almost everything you guys were suggesting. So apples, tuna, and some granola bars here. And really you can eat on the trail for, a few bucks a day if you plan ahead and kind of, are thoughtful about how you are packaging up that food. So if you want to go more into backcountry cooking, we have another workshop that's coming up, and please forgive the doorbell, but we have another workshop coming up next month on, it's actually 4 weeks from today, Monday, March 22. We'll go a little deeper, more ideas and more creative recipes and menu options, etc. So it is 7:24. We have just a few minutes left, and we're at our last sort of topic of stay healthy, which is timely, during a global health crisis. And so we'll talk about personal hygiene. And personal hygiene on the trail is something to be mindful of in planning. And so most important thing that I like to stress for beginners is to take care of your feet. And as we were talking, many of us on this Zoom, you all are big time hikers, right? And so you're aware of the importance of taking care of your feet. And perhaps the most important piece of gear for a good backpacking trip is a pair of boots, a good pair of boots. And I just got, I'm going to grab a pair of these Solomon. These are relatively lightweight. They're completely Gore-Tex, right, up to the uppers here, which means they're going to hold all that water out along the trail, and really good kind of lugs grip here, but they're light. I've also had Oslos, which weigh about 5 times as much as these. Really good ankle support, and you don't feel the trail underneath you because of how thick the sole and the kind of the base of the shoe is. But I like those with ankle support, especially when you're carrying a pack. But how do you take care of your feet? Well, first you got to keep them dry, and that's why Gore-Tex. I'm a big fan of that. The Gore-Tex. Cotton socks hold moisture, right? It's nice to have a wool sock, and even if you're going on a long trek, I wear sock liners. It's a really thin layer to just wick the moisture off of your feet, because usually wet feet are not happy feet, and happy feet are helpful for a happy hike. And so if you're feeling a hot spot, a rub, a tension on your foot, it is better to stop and address that than it is to say, I'll just keep motoring through, because it likely won't go away and it will likely get worse. And that's where moleskin in your first aid kit is very helpful. get a little moleskin on that, and you'll prevent it from becoming a blister. And if your feet are wet, change socks, dry them. Take a break in the sun if it's warm and sunny, right? That sounds nice in February. But take a break, dry your feet off, take your socks out, take your socks off and dry your socks and your boots out, for a little bit. Hand hygiene. It can be hard to wash your hands. You don't have a faucet, right? So bring hand sanitizer or wet wipes. Wet wipes are helpful. However, you're packing them out in most instances. And so I'm a bigger fan of hand sanitizer, so you don't have to pack it out. Teeth brushing. It is so nice, to brush the teeth. You can actually use just baking soda to brush your teeth with. And it's a little bit gentler on the environment than a Crest or a Colgate. But if you do brush your teeth, do find we actually encourage, Leave No Trace principles would encourage that sort of toothbrush waste would be actually buried, similar to human waste. And so there's a couple thoughts on personal hygiene. Feminine hygiene. My wife and I have talked a lot about this. It is much more of an inhibitor for her to go on a backpacking trip because she's wondering how she'll take care of her feminine hygiene needs. And so rather than a guy stand here and talk about feminine hygiene, I've included a link here, and the individual that delivers these videos, she's great. Homemade Wanderlust is her YouTube channel. And she, at I think minute 10:30, she goes deep into female hygiene, and so lots of pointers there if that's a consideration for your next trip. Human waste, right? So we're talking, our bodily functions here. Basics of latrine digging. I said it here. We bring a trowel, right, on all of our Camptown trips. You can also dig with a stick, but Leave No Trace says at least 6 inches below the ground level that you want to dig away, and that's so that your waste can decompose. And they do make biodegradable toilet paper that you can leave. If it is not, and if you're using something like a sophisticated wet wipe, then it needs to be packed out, and that can get kind of gross. So look for the biodegradable toilet paper. If you're at a heavily trafficked site, like you're going up to the Pictured Rocks in Michigan or to Olympic National Park, some of these backcountry sites do have a privy, which is lovely. And so are there any questions about staying healthy and hygiene issues? Okay. All right. Well, really hope that the content was helpful and sort of kind of pushed you along in your efforts here. I'm going to keep answering questions, so keep them coming in. And I see this really good one. For a single overnight trip, what's the approximate maximum pack weight that I should shoot for? That's a great question. It's going to depend on your comfort level and ability level in carrying that. And so if I was you and it's the first time, I would test it, sort of load it up and walk around, right? Whether in your house or outside, and consider, oh, could I carry this for 1 mile or 3 miles or 5 miles? And sort of what would that weight feel like over time? I would say 40 pounds. You should be able to keep it at or under 40 pounds. 40 pounds could be, a third of a person's body weight. And so it just depends on you. I can carry a pack that's a little bigger. I've got a little bit more, to work with than some people. So great question. We wanted to offer this opportunity to you. At Camptown, occasionally we do offer programs where they're open to the public, and you all have an interest and an inclination in backpacking. Otherwise, you wouldn't have, come in for this workshop. And so grab a friend and join us for an overnight backpacking trip on Indiana's scenic Tecumseh Trail. And we are looking at about 8 miles, so about 4 miles each day. And we would love to have you to join us. in May 15 and 16 of 2021. We do provide transportation and facilitation for a fee, $99 per person. What this allows us to do is also offsets our other programs where our participants are not paying, for the programs, or not paying full price. And then of course, food and gear rentals available. And so you can click into our link there on our website. We'd love to have you there. And with that, we are done with the workshop tonight. I'm gonna hang on for questions, and I will say just this: thank you for joining us tonight. It's something I love doing. It's backpacking, and find great joy in doing this with my kids, with my wife, with my friends. And so if you found tonight's content helpful, please consider a donation to Camptown. It's tax deductible, and we are a nonprofit organization working for the betterment of our community and the youth in our community. And so consider making a small donation, or as large as you would like, because we do run off of donations from generous people such as you all. And so with that, I will hang on for questions. And oh, thank you. So Cheryl says she made a donation and signed up for cooking class. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Brett, good to see you, sir. Brett and I are former colleagues. Great to see you, Brett. Jen, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, the mom, and thank you, Abby Wallen. And if there's any other questions, I'll hang on, even if they're individual, about a trip that you're considering. So, pleasure to be with you all, and you have a good night.
So I know one of the recommended trails was the Shades backpacking trail.
Yeah.
What do you know about that trail? That's been one that other people have recommended as kind of like a starter.
Yeah. So it's actually, of the 5 that I think I listed on those 5 ideas, it's the one I haven't done. But I have a good friend who has done it, and I have camped at the same campsite. You can actually canoe the Sugar Creek and camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar. So yeah, I've heard it's you don't have a ton of elevation change, right? And so in that sense, it's not like the Knobstone where you're climbing and descending and wearing yourself out on the up and downs. But it's I think 3 miles or so.
Yeah, 2.5 to 3.
Okay, and I think there's actually, you have to verify with DNR, with Shades, but I think there's actually water there. Like there's potable water source and a privy. So that's kind of nice too, because you don't have to sort of worry about water purification or, digging your cat hole latrine or anything like that. But I'm told it can get busier too. And so it might be, that might be a positive for some people, or it might be that you're looking for solitude and somewhere off the beaten path is more interesting. But Shades, I mean, you can't go wrong out at Shades. Is so.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you go on the nature preserve where you can go?
Yeah, or to Pine Hill.
Oh, Pine Hill. Yeah, that is so nice.
It's gorgeous over there. And I love Shades just because it's not as busy as most places.
Yep.
But it's still just an awesome place.
Yep.
Yeah, anytime someone asks about Shades, I always recommend Pine Hill because it's, I mean, for whatever reason, people just aren't over there as much, but yeah, I love that area. I haven't done the backpacking yet, so.
Yep. Well, if you do it, you gotta let me know how it is, because it would be on my list for this year to get out to and tackle. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'll keep you posted.
But if you want to know sort of maybe it's a little bit less popular, but the Low Gap or the Tecumseh Trail, and again, Tecumseh has so many different places you can start in on. Bear Lake is going to be a little less busy than the Low Gap Trail, and from Bear Lake you can hike in about, I think, 1.9, less than 2 miles to a shelter, to a backcountry shelter, and it's it's not got beds and linens, but it's a closed shelter with a roof on it, and you're off the ground, and so that's another one on the radar.
So I've heard of all the trails that you recommended, but I've I've not been on them.
Yeah.
So Tecumseh, people have talked about like having the shelters and everything,
Yeah.
but I've heard that with the shelters, you have like a increased risk of like mice. Is that really a issue? Like,
I don't know if it's increased risk, but there are mice hanging around backcountry shelters. Yeah, because they know that there's a nice fat juicy meal laying around for them. So, but if you just are prepared to hang your food up and clean up right after dinner, right?
yeah,
You shouldn't have any problems. And so I would always, weather permitting, cook outside. Cook outside away from where you're sleeping. And then dispose of your waste properly, and keep your food hung. You should have no issues. And so I was, in full transparency, I was on the Tecumseh Trail on Martin Luther King weekend, and I did have some mice visiting me. They didn't chew into anything. I just hung my food up, and but I did feel them scurrying around, and so that can be that can be no fun.
yeah. I don't know that I would. I mean, it wouldn't like scare me, but I don't know that I would love that.
Right. Yeah. It woke me up. I thought, what in the world? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Any other questions?
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate you joining us. Tricia, Juan, Kathy, Brett, Carrie, Kelly. Thank you all for participating and joining us tonight. And I'll hang on for just another few seconds.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it was really great information. Somebody posted that they were parked at the Low Gap trailhead and somebody stole their catalytic converter while they were out hiking.
Yeah, was that on like Hoosier Hikers?
Hoosier Hikers, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that, and that's crazy. I have never had any issues. I've hiked there, oh goodness, more, I don't know, 30 times, I've never had any issues. It's sad, right? But people will look
People are getting desperate, I guess.
Yeah, people might.
And they know somebody parked there is going to be gone a while.
That's the other thing. But it is busy though, right? I mean, people are in and out during the day. It's at night, and you have cars parked there overnight, and so that forest gets very, very quiet at night. It is kind of eerie, but yeah, I did see that as well, and I'm not sure there's much you can do to prevent, obviously.
It happened at a hotel. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Yeah, great to have you. And you all have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.